Before we continue, let's update the dependencies for our project. We'll update the Commerce.js dependency, we'll update Next, and we'll update the React and React DOM dependencies. Then we'll npm install, and this will install those newer dependencies. Now I'm going to begin by creating a new file inside of a new folder called context. The file will be called cart.js, and this will be our cart context. We'll begin by importing create context from React. We need this to create two types of context. First, we'll create the cart state context, and then we'll create the cart dispatch context. We're going to keep both of our state and dispatches in separate contexts. We'll then begin by creating a simple reducer. The reducer takes two arguments. The first is the state, and the second is the action. Then, based on the action, we need to switch and do some different things. And the first thing we'll do on set cart is we'll actually update the state of the cart. We'll go ahead and abstract the set cart variable into a constant, and then all we need to do inside of this case is return the current state and merge in the current action payload. If the action doesn't match what is found inside of the switch statement, we'll go ahead and throw an error, and we'll alert the user that an error occurred. We'll then go ahead and export a new constant, and we'll call this cart provider. This will take in the children, and then we'll return. And we're going to go ahead here and we're going to destructure state and dispatch from the use reducer function. We'll pass in our reducer and initial state. Now we don't have initial state, so we'll go ahead and create that now. And that initial state will match the Commerce.js initial state. So we'll say the total items is 0, the total unique items is 0, and the line items is an empty array. Now there is more initial state that you can provide here, but just for the purposes of this video, we'll just include those three. Then back inside of the cart provider, we'll create an async function for getCart, and inside of here, we'll wrap our request to Commerce.js inside of a try-catch block, and we'll make a call to commerce.cart.retrieve. We'll need to go ahead here, and we'll need to import the commerce instance from the lib folder commerce. Then if there's an error, we'll catch that error and we'll console log it. You may want to display some kind of toast in your application so your users are aware something went wrong, but for the purposes of this video, we'll just continue, and with the responsive cart, we'll go ahead and update and call that reducer. So here we need to pass to dispatch set cart and pass in the payload, and the payload will be cart. To make this a little bit easier to manage, we'll go ahead and create a new function called setCart that takes in the payload and calls that dispatch function. Then we'll go ahead and update getCart to call our new function setCart, and we'll pass in the response cart here. So for our provider, all that's left to do is return both of our context providers here. We'll need to provide the value for both as well. So for the dispatch context, we'll give it a value of setCart. That's the only function we'll make available for that context provider. And then for the cart state context provider, the value here will just be state. And this means everything that was inside of the initial state and everything that was returned from commerce.cart.retrieve, that will now be available inside of the cart state context. Then we'll render the children inside of that. When the cart provider mounts, we want to use useEffect here to fetch the cart. And this will update the page and update the cart with the current context. Then all that's left to do is go ahead and export two constants. The first will be use cart state, and the second will be use cart dispatch. And for this, we need to invoke the use context function, and we need to pass in the context that we created above. Then that's all that's left to do is fix one little thing that is important, use reducer. So we'll add that to the import statement at the beginning. Now let's go ahead and create a new file, app.js. We can see here Next.js exports a override for the application. And it's a simple function. So we'll export this function, and this is where we can wrap cart provider around our application. So back inside of the code editor, if I paste that in and export that as a default, all that's then left to do is import cart provider from the cart context and wrap the component with our cart provider. Then let's go ahead and run the Next server. Now if I open localhost 3000, I open my dev tools, and if I have the React developer tools installed, I can see the cart provider and the hooks reducer with everything that was returned from Commerce.js. The responsive cart.retrieve was merged with the initial state, and that updated the overall context of our application.